All right, yesterday we did some research into the different gods of Egypt. We want to talk about that in a minute or two. First of all, let me introduce to you Homer, the age which is named for him, the Homeric age, was from 1150 to 750 BC. This was a time period in Greece where people lived simple lives. They were somewhat isolated from one another, especially from one city to another. But they blended the distinctive elements of the Aegean world into a common Greek culture. So even though they were vastly separated, they still began to believe the same things, think somewhat the same things, act somewhat the same way. During this time period, there were two epic poems written by Homer called what? The Iliad and the Odyssey, right. Have any of you ever read any parts of them, maybe? Okay, you're probably familiar with some of the stories that's in there. Interesting stuff, and if you are interested in reading either or both of those, I have a book that writes it in more of a narrative style instead of poetry, which makes it a little easier to read, I think. All right, so during this time period, we have the development of the Greek mythology. This is the Parthenon in Athens, the temple of Athena, and we want to use that to introduce then the looking at the different gods. The Greek mythology was a belief in many gods, which is called polytheism. These are gods with anthropomorphic qualities. In other words, they seem like human beings in many ways, sometimes worse than human beings, but with abilities of a god. And in contrast to other pagan systems, there are three things that stand out. One, there was no powerful priesthood among the Greek believers. The priests were simply public officials appointed to perform certain religious rites. So you know that if you look at Israel, you look at Babylon, you look at all these different systems that in prior times, there were priests that had a strong hold on the people. Not so among the Greeks. Secondly, they lacked an otherworldliness. In other words, the Greek religion was concerned with the present and emphasized earthly needs. They didn't really think too much about after death. It was all about living this life. So they lacked an otherworldliness. Thirdly, they lacked a system of ethics. So again, we have in other ancient cultures, we have sets of standards, rules. Certainly for the Israelites, they had the Ten Commandments. For the Babylonians, they had certain rules that were set down. But for the Greeks, there was no system of ethics of what was right and wrong. A person's belief was a private affair, unless it upset the established rituals or denied the existence of the gods. You could do what you want. You could believe what you want. Okay, so let's look at some of the gods then, and find out what you discovered in your research, and we can share with one another so that we get a good picture. All right, so this is the goddess Athena, and in this reconstruction, she's shown in her sumptuous robes. In her right hand is a statue of Nike, or Victory is the name. And on her helmet was a sphinx, and on her breast an ivory Medusa. Do you know who Medusa was? Anybody remember Medusa?
You're the lady with the snakes on her head.
Yeah, right. Good old snake head. Is that too much laid out? You without that one? Your eyes will adjust. You can see the picture better now. Here's Nike over here. And still can't see Medusa very well, but it's there. Notice how large the statue is in comparison to the people. And that was in the Parthenon. Another aspect of Jewish mythology concerned a place called Delphi. Now, these are ruins now. At one time, of course, these were columns and housed a building. Delphi is where the Oracle of Delphi resided. The oracle was one who could foretell the future, give information. There's a sacred spring there that this Delphi construction was made. And they consider Delphi to be the actual center of the world. Literally, they call it the navel, or the belly button of the world, is there at Delphi. People came from all over Greece and beyond to have their questions about the future answered by the priestess of Apollo. Apollo, this was initiated by Apollo. Apollo was the god of Delphi, and his priestess was called the Pythia, Pythia. It's the same root as our word python, so the snake. One might hearken back to the Garden of Eden and think of a snake there as well. Her answers, usually cryptic, kind of hidden in the meaning and the words that she uses, could determine the course of everything from when a farmer planted his seedlings to when an empire declared war. Arguments over the correct interpretation of an oracle were common, but the oracle was always happy to give another prophecy for a price. So, if the oracle was obscure enough on one prophecy, she could be sure that there would be more money forthcoming. All right, so this is the oracle at Delphi, which you will come across if you read much about Greek times. By the way, later on, we will see in the city of Philippi a young slave girl who is demon-possessed and following Paul and Silas around and proclaiming them to be the ones that have the message from the Most High God. That demon that she has is called Python. So apparently connected with this. All right, let's consider for a moment the style of dress and so on. We have among the Greeks here are some a Greek priestess and noble women. So you can see the flowing gowns that they wore. Looks somewhat comfortable, I guess. They were very much into their appearance. They have a mirror here, and they're doing lots of things in their hair. Here's another princess of ancient Greece. All right, now let's consider the gods. All right, here are some of the main gods called the Olympians. So we have originally Cronus and Rhea, and they're, I guess you might be consider them the original gods. Are they on the list for the ones you looked up? Cronus, okay. And from Cronus comes Zeus and Hera, and so they are considered the head gods of the Parthenon of the whole group. From them comes Athena. We have Apollo, Artemis, have Ares, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and then over here we have Hermes, Hestia, Demeter, Poseidon, and Hades. So these are some of the main gods, and I think that all those are on your list. So let's talk about who they were. Go down through your list, we'll talk about them, and then we'll show relationship to other gods as well. So who's the first one on your list, John?
Zeus.
Zeus. Okay, what'd you find out about Zeus?
He's the king of the gods and the god of thunder.
All right, that seems to match up with other civilizations too, doesn't it? God of thunder, lightning seems to usually be one of the head gods. All right, so he's the head god. Anybody find anything else about Zeus? All right, who's the next one? Oh, you don't have. Okay, who's the next one, Griff?
Hera and Aphrodite.
Okay. Here's Hera. Are they included? Are they together?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about Hera.
Hera is the goddess of family.
Goddess of family.
And Aphrodite.
Wait. Anything else about Hera?
She's the wife and sister of Zeus.
Right. So she's wife/sister of Zeus. Anything else about Hera? Okay, you find people appealing to Hera in family situations. for help, maybe against Zeus, so convince Zeus to relent in his punishment or whatever, things like that. Okay, then Aphrodite down here, what do you have about Aphrodite, Noah?
Goddess of love and power, her beauty.
Okay, so most known as the goddess of love. Anything else about Aphrodite? Okay, well, who's the next one you have then, Stephen?
Apollo.
Apollo. Okay, right here. What did you find out about Apollo?
The god of the light and the sun.
The light and the sun. Okay, he's considered the sun god. Anything else did you find out about Apollo? Mia?
He was also like considered sometimes the god of music and prophecy.
Okay, music. Prophecy relates to Delphi, because he's the god that's in charge of that. And so the Oracle of Delphi would give prophecies for a price. All right. And then who's the next one you have, Amelia?
Artemis was the Olympian goddess of the hunt.
Yeah, she's the hunter. Anything else about Artemis? You're beginning to see, I think, as you look at the area that each god was kind of in charge of or what they were good at, that those would be the gods you call on if you were in need of something in that area. So if you are in need of a certain person to love you as you love them, who do you call on? If you need love, who do you call on? Aphrodite. If you would like to expand your family,
Hera.
Hera. If you need success out hunting,
Artemis.
Artemis. You see? So these gods are in charge of different areas. All right, who's next? Me? Are you next?
There's Ares,
Ares.
the god of war and son of Zeus.
Right. God of war. Anything else about Ares? All right. Who's next then, John?
Athena.
Athena.
Wisdom, like a lot of things. Wisdom, courage, inspiration, civilization.
Yeah, she was in charge of a lot of things, well respected by most Greeks. She's considered one of the top goddesses to go to. Anything else about Athena?
She was like born on Zeus's head.
Yeah,
He
kind of odd, huh?
swallowed his mother as a fly. He swallowed Athena's mother as a fly, and so her mother was pregnant with her, and so he got a really bad headache, and someone stuck his head open.
Very unusual stuff, right? Okay, interesting. Okay, Rick, who do you have next? Oh, wait a minute, before what city is named after her?
Athens.
Athens, okay. That's why the Parthenon is there. It's a place for her to have her temple. All right, Rick, who's next?
Demeter.
Okay, or Demeter.
Goddess of harvest, sacred law, life and death.
Okay, so harvest, sacred law, and
Life and death.
life and death. Okay. So you can see she's dressed in green. I suppose that's because of the harvest connection. So again, if you wanted good crops, you would sacrifice to Demeter. Anything else about Demeter? All right, who's next? Noah?
Dionysus.
Dionysius. He's not on this page, is he? So we'll go to the more detailed family tree. And where do we see Dionysius? I'm not spotting him. Is he on there?
No.
All right, let's go on there. Okay, here's Zeus. Here's Zeus and Hera. There's the big statue of Zeus. Looks like he has Nike on his hand as well. There's Artemis. And did we talk about Hermes yet? I don't think we did we? Let's stop for a moment while I've got the slide up. And Amelia, tell us about Hermes.
Hermes is the god of shepherds.
Okay. And did he have a job?
Messenger.
Messenger. He's the messenger god. That's why he has wings on his helmet and wings on his feet. He's the messenger god. And because of that, we have, remember we talked in Bible class about the word hermeneutics. It comes from Hermes. It means communication. All right. Then we have Artemis again, and Apollo, we've talked about. Athena, we've talked about. Here's Dionysius. Okay. We're back to Stephen. You had Dionysius, right? Are you the one that started? Or was it Noah? Noah, tell us about Dionysius.
God of wine and madness.
Wine and madness?
Yeah.
All right. So, again, if you wanted to have a big party, Dionysius is your guy. And celebrations of Dionysius were ones that ended up in drunkenness. All right. Where were we? Mia, are there any more? What else do you have?
Hephaestus,
All right, and who is that?
the god of fire and metalworking, the son of Zeus, and he's married to Aphrodite.
Okay, married to Aphrodite, god of fire. Any other information about him? Okay, John?
Poseidon.
Poseidon. You say Poseidon? Okay, let me go back. I think Poseidon is on here, right there.
God of the sea and earthquakes.
All right, God of the sea. That's probably how you mostly picture him, as God of the sea. Usually holding what? A trident, yes. Trident because there are how many prongs? 3 prongs. Okay, what else do you know about Poseidon? Mia?
He's brother to Zeus and Hades.
Okay, brother to Zeus and Hades. Let's see, we have him here. It's kind of hard to get all these relationships correct. Here's Zeus. Poseidon. Did you have that he's married? I don't think that's Aphrodite. Okay. Anything else about Poseidon? All right. Where were we? Is it Griff?
Yeah.
All right. Who's next?
Hades.
Hades.
The god of the underworld.
Yes, the underworld. In fact, the underworld's named after him. It's called Hades, translated in most of our Bibles as hell. Let's see, where's Hades? No.
Top left, or middle left. By Poseidon. Under the.
Oh, there it is. Okay, there's Hades. And anything more about Hades?
He's married to Persephone.
Okay, that's not on there, but okay. It's got her up here. Oh, as a daughter of Zeus and Demeter. So, all right. Anybody, anything else? Okay. Noah, another one?
Hestia.
Spell that.
Hestia.
Okay.
Under
Anybody,
Hades.
anybody spot her?
It's under Hades.
Oh, there it is. Okay, and what about Hestia?
Goddess of hearth and home.
Hearth and home. All right, so you want a happy home, that's who you go to. A hearth is the area in front of the fireplace. And Stephen, another one? Eros. Okay, down here.
The god of love and desire.
God of love, yeah. Especially sexual love. So we get our word erotic. Eros. And you might better know some of these by their Roman names, but especially this one. Anybody know the Roman name for Eros?
Cupid.
Cupid, right, good. Okay, Amelia, another one? That's it. Wow. Okay, there's a lot more on here, aren't there? Aren't you glad I didn't have you look them all up? Because that was plenty as it was, right? Well, let's see, is there anybody else on here that you know about that we didn't look up? I think we covered everybody that's well known. All right, so let's. This is interesting, I think. If you look at the different gods, and this is how you pray, what you pray for. I already mentioned that because we talked about what they're the god of. But here, Apollo, moderation in all things, orderliness, oracular advice. That means, from a spirit about the future. That's Apollo. Aries, or he's Mars in the Roman. Onset of war, satisfaction of aggressive impulses. Dionysius, or Bacchus in the Romans. Freedom of social expectations. Ecstatic union with the god. Eros, or Cupid, winning the love of the beloved. Hades, or Pluto in the Roman system, death to one's enemies. So if you wanted to pray for someone's death, you would pray to Hades. Hephaestus, or Vulcan, maybe you've heard of him in the Roman system, skill at making machinery and working at the forge. So that's associated with fire. You're making things. Hermes, or Mercury, prosperity as a trader or merchant. Why? Because he's the one that's traveling. So he's the one you go to. Pan, we didn't mention, success for hunters. Poseidon, or Neptune, safe journey by sea. Of course, you want him on your side. Zeus, or Jupiter, building an empire. Firm rule and control. Why? Because he's the head of the gods. So you want him on your side if you're building an empire. Aphrodite, or Venus, if you want irresistible good looks. And who wouldn't, right? You go to Aphrodite. I know some of you don't need that, but others might. Artemis, or Diana, this is the goddess of the Ephesians, by the way, that Paul encountered there, Paul over in Ephesus. Did I embarrass you
No.
by saying you didn't need to pray for good looks?
Okay.
You go to her for easy childbirth, or if you're a runner. Any of you runners? No runners? No, you're a runner? Matthew? Yeah. So I'm not suggesting you pray to her, but that if you were back in those times, you might have. Is that Athena? It's hard to read that. Minerva, clever strategies, domestic skills, practical wisdom. You go to Demeter for fertility. Hecate for wealth or magical powers. Hestia, or Vesta, for protection of the home and hearth. Hera, or Juno, for faithfulness in marriage. And the Muses, for inspiration in poetry and music. This is where we get our word music, is from the Muses. They were the gods that gave that inspiration. All right? So, any questions about this? You understand the relationship between the gods and different things that people might want and why they would pray to certain gods. Now, what I found interesting was when I came across this next slide, and this is looking at things concerning, it says Roman mythology, but it came originally from the Greeks. The Romans borrowed it from the Greeks. And then also what gets transferred into, you know what, I think I'll wait till we get to Rome to do that one. All right, let's skip over that. Now, this is comparing the gods in different cultures. We've talked about the Phoenicians, Babylon, Assyria, a number of these. Some of those we haven't. But Nimrod, who we find in Genesis, is called the Lord of Heaven. And here's how he's known in different civilizations. Baal, El, Belus, Venus, Zeus, Jupiter, Ra, Vishnu, and so on. That's really all talking about Nimrod. And then we have Tammuz. I don't remember we talked about Tammuz before, the child god or Messiah. Tammuz there, Bacchus takes his place among the Phoenicians. Hercules in Assyria, Dionysius in Greece, Attis or Bacchus would be there too. Osiris and Horus are associated with Tammuz. Krishna, you've heard of that, right? Quetzalcoatl, the god of Mexico. That's who Montezuma thought Cortez was Quetzalcoatl coming back. And then Semiramis, the queen of heaven. You remember Ashtoreth or Ashtaroth, Astarte? We talked about those names before in the land of Canaan. Re, Ishtar, Beltis, Aphrodite, Cybele or Diana, Isis, Hathor, and Frida down here in Scandinavia. So interesting, as you go through the different names of the gods in different cultures, many of them are talking about the same god, really, just a different name. And it goes back to these ones that are in ancient Babylon, essentially. All right. Now, okay, I was trying to figure out what my next slide is. My next slide has to do with the Olympics. So we want to take a little bit of time to do some research on that. You did not bring your Chromebooks today, did you? No. All right. Tell you what we'll do. Bring the Chromebooks tomorrow, and we'll spend a little time doing research on the Olympics tomorrow. There's another assignment for you to do tonight, and that is to read an article that is in your packet called The Odyssey of Homer. And there are some questions to answer about that. So this will give you some more information about Homer's writing The Odyssey. It's toward the back of your packet. Is everybody able to find it? Read The Odyssey of Homer and then answer the questions that are there. So the rest of the period you can work on that, have that completed for tomorrow. Any questions?